Let me do a little bit of housekeeping. This session will be recorded and will be posted on the website, and want to make sure that everybody has access to it. We will be, what we're going to do in terms of agenda, on to the next slide here. I'm going to go into our online knowledge base that many of you may not know is there. I want to give you just a brief overview of what is in there. Again, talk about our product development roadmap. Many of you are aware of where we're headed with the product, but many are not. So we should hit on that. And our first release of the new product will be the client portal here in August. And then Fred, who's with me here on the line, once I finish, I'll turn it over to Fred, and he'll go into the meat of the training for today. So
hello,
again,
everybody.
Yeah, there's Fred. So this is Carl Coe speaking with Imagine Time, and Fred Lindsley. For those of you that don't know, Fred's the founder of the company and the person that wrote the software. So the best source to go through this training together. So let's get started. Let me first things first. I want to show you. I want to go to the Fresh Desk, our customer support site, and pull that up here real quick. That link wasn't working, of course. So here we go. And I need to go back to Zoom to share that site. Fred, let me know when you can see this.
Okay.
Here it is. Can you see that, Fred?
Yeah, we're good.
Very, very good. So, folks, when you go to imaginetime.com and you go over to the support tab on the far right, it'll take you to this screen here. And this is now where you can, of course, you can always call us or email us, but you can now initiate a support ticket on the site. And we will be notified of that support ticket immediately, and it will be handled like any other engagement that you might have. And you'll be able to check the status of your ticket. You'll be able to get a lot of information about your particular issue. But we also have the knowledge base here where if as I scroll down, we've got over 30 videos, or actually 35 videos that will hit on many of the topics that you may have. We've got everything broken down, including the entire manual. And you can search by topic that you might be looking for. Let's just think of one here quick. Let's look for cloning, and you can see the knowledge base takes you directly to the material in the website, in the video, but also in the manual. So you can get to the information that you want to. So I want to make sure we rolled this out a little while ago, but not everyone is familiar with it. So I want to make sure that you know when you go to the imaginetime.com website and you go to support, all this information is here, and you can log tickets and check status of tickets that way now. So I want to make sure you're aware of that. The next thing I want to, let me go back to the slide presentation. Let's talk very briefly about where we're headed as a company and with the product. So as we've talked about in the past, we are in the midst of doing a massive next generation of Imagine Time, I guess you would call it. It will be a fully web-based version of Imagine Time that's taking advantage of all the modern technologies for user interface, for security, for mobility. It will be a true web-based platform. In terms of the roadmap for that, the client portal, which we're going to talk about very briefly here at the end of today's call, the client portal will be released this month. It's really all about secure file sharing and providing you something that is very usable for your clients. The real issue with portals of today is they're no good if your end clients aren't using them. So we're putting a lot of focus into that. The next release will be document management in the month of September. And then from there, workflow, time and billing, reporting, et cetera. And all that will continue to roll out through the rest of the year. Now, what I'd like to do is I'm going to roll over to Fred to go into the meat of the training. And the if we go back to the agenda, there are three main parts we're going to talk about: common problems and solutions, Superbill tips and tricks, and practice management reports. We do have Q&A set up where you can submit questions online, and at the end, we'll do everything we can to answer those questions. So with that, I'm going to turn it over to Fred, and thank you for your patience as this has been a challenge getting going.
Hello, everybody. I hope you're having a nice day wherever you are today. And this is a slideshow, and you're going to be able to download this for reference after this training session. I wanted to be able to go live with you on it, but we're still working through some glitches with getting dual host presentations. So in the next webinar, we'll have a little more interactivity. But the first thing is the unrecognized database issue. This comes up when there's a disconnect on any of the workstations from the data file, which is on the server. So if somebody turns off their computer without logging out of Imagine Time, or if there's a lightning storm and everything reboots, you're going to get this message. And it doesn't necessarily mean that there's anything wrong with the software. It just means that you need to run the repair and compact utility. That checks the sort indexes and makes sure that the file is in good working order. So in order to do that, you're going to go from the ribbon menu. We won't be using the traditional menu today, and I know some of you really like that, but there are more features on the ribbon menu. So let's just try and get acquainted with that. You go to your setup utilities, all right, and you open up general utilities right here. Underneath that, you'll see a red circle around repair and compact. Now, you can run that if you're the only person in the database. And there is a show users utility on this very same menu that will tell you if you're the only person in the database. If you are the only person in, then you can run this repair and compact. That's usually not how it happens, though. What happens is you go into the office, you can't get in. And then the first question you need to ask yourself is anybody else in the software? Because if anybody else is in the software, they can go into the general utilities and run the repair and compact and restore working order. However, if none of those cases are true, you're going to go to the right side of this screen, and I'm using Windows 10, but it's pretty much the same on Windows 7. You're going to go to the Imagine Time Practice Management window, and the fourth down is the Repair Imagine Time database. That's going to bring up this screen on the bottom right. You do have to know where your database is. For single users, that's going to be the path right there, that first database path. But everybody else, network people, are going to have X drive, T drive, and so on. Someone in the firm needs to know where that database path is. The data file is TV data MDB. The runtime is simply the location of your MS Access exe file. We've shown you a suggested location here. It's always underneath the Microsoft Office subdirectory, so it's not too hard to find, okay? And then you simply click the button at the bottom of the screen, which is a little obscured right now, and that will repair the database. This is the external network repair utility. Now, on occasion, people will say, I can't find it on my menu. If that's the case, you go to the Freshdesk website. It tells you up here where to locate that. Item number 6 under fixes and updates. It's the middle paragraph. So all that you need for referencing this issue is right on this slide. I'm going to move on to the next slide because we've got a lot to cover, but that's basically how you can correct that issue. Anything else to add to that, Carl?
Well, the one thing I did want to make note of for everyone, our customers that are using the Imagine Time Cloud don't deal with this much, and we've made a special offer over the last couple of months that we're going to extend because we've had several hundred of you move over to the cloud, and this is one of the issues why that you won't have to deal with nearly as much. So I meant to make mention of that earlier.
Well, that's a good point, Carl. Last summer, 2018, when Windows released Windows 10 version 1803, they caused timeout every several hours. to occur with the Microsoft Access database. It was clearly a bug, but it took them several months to fix it, and it did cause some disruption. So using our cloud offering does eliminate any possibilities that a release from Microsoft can slow down your daily work. Okay, let's move to the next slide. Do I have control of that, or you do, Carl? Okay, this works on every form and access in our database, and many people don't know how to use it. It's the right click in a particular field, and I can't demonstrate it to you because this is a slide. But basically, most often you might right click in the billing partner field, and you would use the filter by selection for a particular billing partner. You get that maximized, Carl? Great, thank you. And so you'd click in FOL and you'd filter by selection, and all of a sudden on the bottom left where it says record 4 of 419, you'd see record 1 of 120, because you'll be looking at a subset of FOL's clients. This is a nice way for you to scroll through all of one particular billing partner's clients and make corrections to them. Now, when I say scroll through, you're going to ask me, well, in what order? So you could click in the sort name field and then right click again with your mouse and sort ascending. And now you're walking through a subset of FOL's clients, and you're walking through it alphabetically. So if he wanted you to make some change to everything and every client of his, this would be an easy way to know where you left off. These same features are also available on the Form Tools ribbon, which is up top here. You can see ascending, descending, and filter. It's a little easier with the right click, but many people like the Form Tools ribbon. In addition, you can delete records and start new records from the Form Tools ribbon, in addition to the traditional ways, which oftentimes is clicking the record selector on the far left where that black arrow is near primary contact information, pressing your delete key, or at the bottom left to add a new record, clicking the arrow with the asterisk. But the most important thing here is use these filters, because they are available on almost every screen. They will empower you. Okay, let's move to the next slide, please. I don't know if I can do that. That's okay. This is applying hanging payments. Not too many software products offer this, but someone comes in, new client, writes you a check. That's nice, but you haven't generated an invoice yet. Or someone mails in a check and you haven't generated an invoice yet. In the hanging payments utility, which is accessed under collections and statements, apply hanging payments, and import online payments, on this tab, apply unapplied client payments, anything in bold is a hanging payment. It means that there is a payment that has not been applied to invoice. Well, without this utility, you'd have to go into the payment screen for each client, scroll back to the hanging payment, and then apply it to invoices. This makes that much easier. If you just click the apply unapplied payments, it applies them on a direct match, if you'll see here. If there is no direct match, it does it by date and reference. Now, all of these items in black, if there are unpaid invoices, will actually go away. So if you had hundreds of advanced payments, this would be a very easy way to apply them in very little time. On the right side of the screen are the other posting options. So not everybody wants direct match. Some just direct, one of these three. But the default is the direct match. Okay, so let's shoot to the next slide. All right, standard billing explanations. These are used. This is the F4 key, and some people get a little stuck with the F4 key. If you're not familiar with the Windows keyboard, sometimes you have to press the FN key to actually access the F4 key. Not everybody gets that. It is a little confusing. So make sure you realize that the function keys at the top of the screen have two functions, and depending upon the setting of the FN key, it will determine whether the lower one works or the F series of keys work. You want to use the F4 key. It will pop up a standard explanation that you can insert into a timeslip or into an invoice. Now, how to get to this? open up the billing dashboard from your ribbon menu. Okay, more format billing options will display this billing invoice option screen on the right under step 2. Now, step 3 is click set up standard billing explanations. This pulls up a little editor. You need to enter a code where this code is, my code, and a short description, like standard 1040 explanation. And then you type in whatever you'd like to say in here. And when you're using these codes, they're always going to pop up in a lookup. But you have, you can bold them or italicize them and change the font. So you can make this fairly elaborate. And you can actually make it a full paragraph if you wish. Well, I'll show you how these are implemented in just a moment, but while we're on this, let me just mention the special characters. If you use a $Y for this year, or a $Z for next year, or $P for the current month, it will substitute in the text of your standard explanation. So oftentimes you'll see monthly services for $P, space $Y, and it might substitute December 2018, depending upon what you put in the form on the bottom left of this screen where it says December 2018. And we just added the next year feature, which is $Z. So that if you have 2018 set up in here, a $C is going to make it 2019. Okay, next slide, please. Okay, here's an example of the F4 key. If you're in either the time slip screen on the left and you press F4, it's going to show you the code, and that will insert the text into that window. And if you've already started a sentence, it will insert it at the end of the sentence. It won't wipe out what you've done. This also works the same way in the timer screen. On the bottom right is an example of how you might insert an explanation in an element row of a Superbill. So it works the same in Superbills, it works the same in narrative bills or progress bills, depending upon what you're most comfortable with. We're strongly recommending our clients move to the Superbill because it does have many more powerful features. But if you like the narrative bill and it serves your needs, just be aware that this F4 key is a quick way to add explanations. Next slide, please.
Yeah, Fred, so let me just remind the audience that you can ask questions here online, and we'll try to do our best to answer them at the end, even though we got started late. We're making pretty good time and do expect to finish by the top of the hour. Before we go into the Superbill, I'm going to just post a quick poll question because the Superbill seems to be one of the more misunderstood elements of the program. I'm not sure if Mike Gordon and his team are on the line. He's a customer out in Oregon, and he tells the story that many years ago, Fred tried to get him to use the Superbill, and he said, no, I don't need it. I don't want it. It's too hard. And then not too long ago, he began using the Superbill, and he, as he put it, it's changed his life, and he'll never go back. So obviously, we like that feedback, and we want to make sure that we're providing as much power and education as we can to help you use this function. So I'm going to launch this poll, and if you would just give us your quick feedback as Fred begins the next section. And we'll come back to that, Fred.
Okay, great. I'm gonna say I love it. Okay, so in getting started with a Superbill, you can do it one client at a time. So you could actually go to the billing dashboard, select Superbill, and do a Superbill for that client. And a year later, when you come back, or a month later, when you come back to do that Superbill, you'll have a copy of last month's Superbill in there. So it's more or less like having a stored Word document where you can just tweak a few changes. That's one way of approaching it. But the way we're showing on this screen is we're suggesting that you use the master templates. So you're going to open the billing dashboard, and that's slide 6. So when you get this document Carl, you'll be providing some sort of instructions via email as to how they can get this. Probably
right.
be on the Fresh Desk site.
Yep.
So you open the dashboard. You go again to more format and billing options where we were just a moment ago. So once you have the slide, you can easily see that. And then you choose Superbill formats. This is a little table here. If you use the scroll bar and you pull it down to the bottom, you'll see a blank window where you can add a new template type. What are template types? Well, it's just an explanation of the various different types of services that your firm provides. So in this firm, they do 1040s audits, they do compilation 1120Ss and monthly services and a few other things. So you set up by clicking this red button, Set Up Master Superbill Templates. It pops up this screen on the bottom right, and this has been completed. But what you do is each of these areas here where it says $1, $1, and 0, they're rows. So we set up 3 rows and put a placeholder of $1 in there. And for each row, when you click on a row, this explanation area on the bottom appears. So I put in monthly services for carat P. That's going to put the month in there. Actually, probably carat P, carat Y would be more articulate. And then I'm going to repeat that process for the next row by clicking the next row where it says T-Pay. And then this final one we're not going to get into in this seminar. That's a fairly sophisticated feature that will empower you to bill extra services outside the scope of your engagement. For now, we're just going to cover these first 2 rows. And what I've set up here is to clear all the slips for this payroll service and to clear all the time slips for the CMON service. Now, what does clear mean? Well, you enter a time slip. More advanced software of today's age, you don't delete time slips when they get billed, because if you did, you wouldn't have any historical information to measure realization and other things. So, but there has to be a way of telling the software that the time slip has been billed. So what we do is preliminary, we have to decide which slips are going to be included in the invoice. Now, if we use the clear slips option as opposed to the release slips option, which I can't show you here because this is a still life, the release slips option will only include slips that you've marked to include in this invoice. But if you're a firm that pretty much clears everything out each month as you do the service, the clear slips option is quicker because it doesn't require you to go in and mark which slips are going to be included or not included in the invoice. So that's the nature of this clear slips option. We're going to be having a series of the seminars on the Superbill, but this is very important. And it is described, there's a 30-minute video on the website, which also covers this in some detail. But I've set this up basically for these 2 rows and to clear the slips for each of these work categories. You can have multiple levels on your Superbill. That's a very sophisticated feature where you can have groups of subtotals. You can also have memo rows and detail rows and subtotal rows. I'm not going to get too much into that right now, but suffice it to say that we can do things on this invoice that you would struggle to do in Microsoft Word. Believe me when I say subtotals and all of this tab stuff in Word, it gets very complicated. Even with a Word table, we can do things that software can't reach. So one other thing is, this is a master template. And so it's not instantiated at the client level right now. It's just hanging out there. There's a quick edit feature and a choose client feature. I'm going to skip that today, but that's a quick way of bringing the master template in to all the clients that do monthly bookkeeping services. But for today, we're just going to bring it into one client. So if you'd move to the next screen, Carl, please. Okay. Now, this is what happens when you, let's say you set up that master template. It's sitting there, and Big Test Tugboat is a client that's never had a Superbill. You're going to get this message. This bill type requires a work code, description, and amount. Click OK to edit these fields. When you click OK, you're going to have this blank template that comes up that says standard. Now, many of our clients that know enough about the Superbill to use it just use the standard template. And that allows them to create an invoice with multiple rows with a subtotal. You might want to show a discount or an expense, or you might want to break it down with some additional time slips showing at the bottom for extra services. And you can do that with a standard template. But if you'll move to the next slide, please. What I've done in here is I've imported the monthly template. I deleted the last row by clicking where you see this asterisk here on the left side of the screen. I've deleted the bill excluded codes because that's this feature we'll talk about next time. And I just, instead of the dollar placeholders, I put in 750 for CMON. Notice at the bottom of the screen, there's a time slip section now. And this is actually showing me the time slips that are associated with that work code. And in fact, at standard rates, those time slips add up to $700. I'm billing a standard amount, a value billed amount of $750. That's what we've agreed upon. So the system automatically calculates on a weighted average basis the write-up between the two slips. You can override that. So if you want to make a disproportionate write-up or write-down between staff, you can do that in the column underneath this 0 here. But for now, we're going to go with a weighted average. And again, each row, it has its own explanation. So if I was able to click on the $200 row, you'd see a different explanation, and you'd also see different time slips. Okay, so what this setup has done now is it's taken the master template and it's instantiated it for this client. So next month, when I go in and open up the Superbill for this client and select the monthly template, it's going to have these values in here, the same values that I used last month. Okay, so that's a big, easy thing, because if your bills don't change that month and you need to do 20 or 30 of these all at once, you can select the auto biller. You can select the auto biller, and it'll pull up all the invoices. And then you can just quickly jump in and make the small changes that might occur on a few of the clients. We're going to cover that again in another webinar. But this particular setup generates this invoice on the top right. We haven't shown all the features of the invoice. We don't have the remittance tab on the bottom and the complete mini statement, but you get the idea. And these blue items also show the invoice line item row options. Now, we covered them a little bit already. This clear option, here's the release slips, this code. It's not actually implemented. And it's all level 1. So there's no more than one subtotal on this bill. And the order that these items appear is first and second. So you could change the order. I could flip them. I could show the payroll services first and the CMON services second by flipping these numbers, okay? This, if you're interested, this is a feature that was released this year, print addendum of unbilled release time and expense detail. If you do need to attach an addendum of detail to your Superbill invoice, this will allow you to do it, but it does require that you use the release slips option, not the clear slips this code. So you would have to go down to the bottom of the screen and uncheck these hold boxes. Now there's a couple of fast ways to do that. These release and hold buttons on the bottom right that are a little obscured enable you to do that. But this is going to at least get you started. If you want to show the mini statement information, that $5,900 that's showing on the invoice at the top right of the screen, you check this show statement invoice info on the bottom left. To recap, this time down here, that's what's going to be marked as billed when this invoice is posted. And it'll still be in the system. There's a billing history report on the report menu that will let you fully report on that time. But when you go into your work in progress screen, it will no longer appear there. Okay, so let's move to the next slide. This is an example of a much more sophisticated Superbill. That's where we're going to be heading in these webinars. We're not going to dwell just on the Superbill, but we're going to, I guess, in these first two webinars, try and get everybody to a point where they can use it and cover other topics of interest. And we certainly like to know what those topics are. So if you folks suggest some today, we'll try and include them. This is a bill. Let's just look at the result. Here we're doing year-end bookkeeping and a corporate tax return. Now, if you look at this $3,000 and then move your eye over to the template, you'll see the $3,000 for the CYRE code. And on the bottom, you're seeing we're clearing $28.75 of time, and we've written it up to $3,000. So that's all what's included in that very first paragraph. Second paragraph is $1,600. That's for the tax return. And now here's this bill excluded code feature, which has under slip details in the middle of the Superbill screen, a yes or no. So if I say yes, it actually displays the time slip details in the format that you prefer. Some folks don't want to show the rate or the amount. They just want to show the hours. So this is pretty much what a lawyer would show on his invoice. But we're including a memo row here. That's the fourth row down on this template on the left, the memo row. And you'll see that it says additional services not an engagement scope. This really makes it easy for you to justify cost overruns when they're warranted. You know, it's right on the invoice. The client can see it. If you prefer to type a paragraph, you can use a special character, and it's going to be hard for you to notice this, but it's right in this explanation here in the Superbill in the middle of the screen, $H. You could answer no here and type a paragraph in and put $H, which would say additional management advisory services 1.5 hours. So it would format like a paragraph instead of like a time slip invoice. This is an extremely powerful template. You'll notice it's the Comp 1120S template. Now, if I switched back to the monthly template, that's going to retrieve that template that we were just working on. If you could back up one screen, Carl. Just pressing your up arrow goes back to that previous screen. That's going to pull this up. So once you've got these templates set up, you can go back and forth between your services, make little modifications and bill them. Okay, let's move to the next slide and the slide after that. Okay.
Fred, as we do that, let me just show, since everyone was kind enough to do the results, let's share the results of the Superbill poll. So, by the way, there are 185 firms on the call today, which is fantastic, which means we're probably well over 500 attendees. Of those, 121 of the firms responded, and 26% love it, another 17% want some help, and then a whole bunch of you would like help, would like to use it. So more to come on this as we go along, and as Fred said, we will be providing more training. Incidentally, next time we do this, it will be with the live software as opposed to screenshots. It'll be a heck of a lot easier for you to follow. So apologies for not making that available here on the first one. We'll get better as we go.
And for those of you that it's not relevant, just bear in mind that every one of our webinars is going to cover more than just the Superbill. So please stick around for the next one.
Yeah, and there are several questions, and we'll get to them at the end, but to clarify one that just came up, everyone has this software. This is not an additional module. It's just part of the time and billing platform. It's not something extra you need to buy.
Okay, great. All right, so now we're going to go on to daily and monthly reports. Now, there's several ways that you can access reports in the software, but we've got to start with the Reporting and Analytics tab, which I don't know if I have a cursor available to me. I don't. But at the top right of your screen, you'll see that the Reporting and Analytics ribbon is exposed. If you're using the traditional menu, please make an attempt to follow along with this ribbon, because the traditional menu, which came out in 2001, 2000, it only has a certain number of options on it. Since then, there's been many, many features added to the software that aren't on the traditional menu. So it's important that you do try and migrate over to this ribbon. So go to the reporting ribbon, click on daily monthly reports, and we're going to choose staff and client performance reports. There are other selections on this menu like invoice and payments, daily and weekly time expense reports, but right now we're going to cover the staff and client performance practice management report. And the first one we're looking at is staff realization, invoices and production. And this is an example of the report on the bottom, and it covers the year of 2018. If any of you have downloaded our demo recently, you should have this information just as it's presented here. But let's take a look at All Rise Robes. During that period of time, we billed $4,400 to them. That's everything we invoiced for the year. It included 43 hours of work, $101 an hour, and we realized 85% of our standard billing rates. Now, how do I know that? Well, here's the write-down. It was $51.63 at standard. We had to write down $763 of time. So this is telling you how we did on that client for whatever we invoiced during this period. Now, this is what I call, there's three indicators of practice management in a CPA firm, in my opinion, when you're getting into realization. There's the lagging indicators are invoiced slips and realization, because time often gets invoiced much later than when it's entered. The indicator that lags farthest behind is up here on the bottom, top right, where it says staff realization pay production. If I'm going to bonus my staff based upon what the clients pay, that's the indicator that lags the most, because the last thing that happens, except for some exceptional firms, and I really admire these people, where they get paid up front. But if you're getting paid at the end of the service, the last thing that happens is first the time gets entered, then the invoice gets created, and then you get paid. So that's why I call that a lagging or trailing indicator. So what is the first indicator? It's when the time's recorded. So what we've done over here on the right side is we have a thing called production-based realization. And this is a leading indicator. So during this period of time of 2018, we actually recorded $8,600 of slips for All Rise Robes, the same write-down. So we haven't invoiced all of these slips. So the realization number is pumped up a little bit, 91%, because it's very possible we will be writing off or writing up some of those slips. But what this does tell you is during this period, we actually created a lot more inventory than we invoiced. And that's why we put this additional information in here, because it tells you how you're keeping up with your inventory. I see so many firms that have tremendous amounts of inventory on their work in progress reports. They set up progress bills, but there's never a day of reckoning when the time gets cleared against the progress bill. And so the true realization is not known until there's some sort of conflict or something like that. So we provide this information in here. If you saw, for instance, slips at standard $17,000 on this report, only invoice $51.63, it immediately calls into question what's going on with that client. So again, very effective practice management report with both leading and trailing indicators. Let's jump to the next screen. These are different types of reports. This one on the right, I'm going to cover first because it's pretty generic, but everybody seems to like it. It's for any period of time. It gives you both the current period, which would be this quarter of 10/1 to 12. It gives you the time in that quarter, and then the year-to-date time underneath it. And it's broken down between chargeable, non-chargeable, and total. So it's a very basic report, but it does give you some very key information about the ratio of chargeable to non-chargeable and how much total chargeable and non-chargeable time was recorded during that period. Now, for firms that are not time-based, this probably isn't that useful. We make an argument that some manner of timekeeping is productive in terms of at least keeping your value billing in line, because it's harder to measure profitability when you're doing value billing. But let's look at the one on the left side. The left side, again, this comes from the daily monthly report screen, the one we were on. If you could back up one slide, Carl, please. Two slides, I guess. One, yeah, okay. On the right side of the screen, and this daily monthly reports in the blue section, staff time slip activity and expense by code. Okay, let's jump down 2 slides. Oh, 1 slide, sorry, back up. So what this is showing you is the work codes that Jay Purnell worked on for the current period, which is a quarter, and the year to date. We'll focus on the quarter, and you can see that he is most efficient in some work codes and less efficient in others. He does quite a bit of compilation work and a very small write-down. There aren't any there is write-ups. When he does fiduciary work and when he does partnership returns, he has write-ups. Now, there's an option on the screen that allows you to display clients in here instead of work codes. So you're able to actually see what work codes Jay is most effective on, and also the clients where he's most effective. And you know what's interesting about this is that if you see this $395 write-down, it's usually 1 or 2 clients. So it's easily isolated to both the work code and the client. Okay. Now, we also see, we're going to jump to the year-to-date for this. We see his total hours year-to-date of 2006 chargeable, and he had additional non-chargeable time of 405 hours. A lot of that was office administration, not too much business development, 2 hours. So this is going to give you an idea of whether his non-chargeable time is really contributing in a significant way to the firm, and also the ratio between chargeable and non-chargeable. I would say anybody that can charge 2,000 billable hours and realize a high ratio is a pretty good employee. All right, let's jump to the next slide, please.
And Fred, for time check, we've got about 5 more minutes.
Okay. Okay, for 5 minutes, we're going to do this report. This is one of the best reports for realization in the program by client. Jump back to that form real quickly. We'll keep this fast. One more back. That's it. This is the client invoiced amounts with cost by code. Okay, let's jump back down a couple of slides. There we are. I've selected the work code option. So on all rise robes, we had time that was billed of $4,488 during the period. Net realized was $3,700. There were some progress invoices, so they're not part of the realization computation. Their day of reckoning is when they get closed out on a final bill. If you guys don't realize that, we do the final bills and we'll sort of group progress invoices together. But for the invoices that went out that had time associated with them, here are the write-downs and write-ups by work code. Now, you can also consolidate this report, and on the bottom, you can also run this report by staff. So this is an excellent report to show you what the staff worked on for clients that were invoiced. And if you base bonuses on what was invoiced, it's a very excellent report for that. But very good report for measuring where you do well on a particular client and for seeing what was invoiced. Okay, it also has an analytics section on the right with realized percentages, gross profit, if you put in labor costs, and so on. Let's jump to the next slide. This actually was one of the first premier practice management reports. On the reporting and analytics client snapshot, you can sort this report by billing partner, realized percentage, by chargeable time. It's a wake-up call. It's actually used in partner disputes because you'll run it by partner and you'll see what their total production is, what their write-offs are in total, what their average outstanding aging is, what was invoice paid, their bad debts. For example, take the 5th row, Sparkle Plenty. They owe us $400. The time was $353, so we wrote it up, $120 good realization, 113%, but they never paid their invoice. And if we get around to writing it off, it's going to appear in the bad debts. So a better client would be the first row, where it's an average 43 days outstanding, total invoice and total paid lines up pretty nicely. Then you look over here and you say there's not too much that's outstanding over 30 days. And in general, we've averaged 239% realization. So I've sorted this in descending realization order. This is an excellent report for firms with partners to hold themselves accountable to see who's contributing and how much effort goes into what they're contributing. And I think that's pretty much a wrap up on the practice management reports. I'm sorry to have to rush through it. Any feedback you guys have is great. We can slow it down next time or speed it up. And Carl, I'll turn it over to you.
Thank you, Fred, and just excellent. And as you can tell, there's a lot to this. We have over 45 standard reports available to you, and then of course you can run your own. So we could spend a lot of time on this, and same with the Superbill, and we will in future seminars. We have a number of questions, Fred. Why don't we do this? I'm going to hold the questions until the very end. We've got one more topic we want to get through on the client portal. I want to introduce a gentleman named Jason Goldfinger, who's recently joined us from Citrix ShareFile, and he's leading the way for us on our client portal. So Jason, I'm going to kick it over to you.
Thanks, Carl. Yeah, really happy to join the team, guys. As most of you know, the company is just unbelievably friendly and full of really good people, so I'm really excited to be a part of it. For a little background on me, Carl mentioned, I worked at Citrix ShareFile for about 5 years and ran the accounting ShareFile sales team for 3 of those years. So I've got a really good handle on file sharing security and overall best practices. So Carl mentioned earlier, a portal is no good if clients aren't using it. And for a majority of you, that's going to be a pretty common issue. So we've designed our new portal to be as user-friendly as possible so that your clients will actually use it. However, no matter how easy a portal is, you're still going to have a lot of clients that won't use it simply because they hate usernames and passwords. So of course, they end up using email instead. On the purpose of time, I was going to go into this slide pretty deep, but the simple fact is, normal email is bad, secure email is good, right? So along with the portal, we will have a plugin for Outlook that will enable you and your clients to email documents securely without using usernames and passwords. It will be easier for your clients to open than a password-protected PDF, and also a lot more secure. So this will also be the first look of what the new design of Imagine Time will look like and what the practice management solution will eventually transform into. So we're very excited for you guys to take a look at it. And let's go ahead and take a poll on how you feel about your current portal as it is today.
Great. We just launched that quick poll. And again, we appreciate your feedback. Jason said something really important there. The portal that will be released here August 12th is what the new Imagine Time, the next version of Imagine Time, is going to look like. So that user interface is just step one on the long road for the entire practice management suite. So we're excited to show it to you, and obviously reach out to us any number of ways to let us know if you'd like to see it. So I'm gonna, let's do this. So we're at the top of the hour, but we are gonna answer every question that was submitted. There were only 10 or 15, but we do wanna answer them for you. If you have to jump, that's okay, they'll be recorded, and we will send an email with the answers to the questions as well. So let's jump back to the questions here. I'm gonna go from the top and just stick with me. Fred, you there to help answer?
I'm here.
Yeah, first one I'll answer. Will the cloud-based product integrate with QuickBooks Desktop? Yes, absolutely. It absolutely will, and it will also integrate with QuickBooks Online. So very important. Shelley Bender has a question, Fred, on the Superbill. Is there a way to enter multiple line items in the Superbill and have separate amounts of each line item? For example, X equals 10, Y equals 15, but the total is 25.
Yes, there is. Yeah, there is. And that's, Shelley, I would encourage you to watch the video and also call our tech support people, because that's a question that they can jump onto your screen and answer in about 5 minutes. But that's where we get into the line orders and the subtotals. So yes, there can be multiple rows with subtotals, absolutely, and with different amounts.
And she also asked, where do you enter a credit to a Superbill and invoice? And Shelley, if you will call or drop us a note, we'll answer that for you as well. And
I can answer that quickly. Okay. What I would if you want the credit or discount to be associated with a specific work code, just enter it as a separate line, as a minus item, using the clear slips this code feature or the release slips this code feature. You can also, I suggest, create a separate work code called discount or DISC and use that on a separate line, because then you won't, and just use the clear slips option. And again, call the staff for more help on that, but that's a quick answer on that.
Great. Thank you, Fred. We have a question. Is there a way to add additional services not in scope quickly without having to retype? Well,
yes. I mean, the way you would do that is you could either display the time slips, or you can, which already have a description. If you're careful about how you record your time slips and what you say, the time slips might say enough. And you can obscure the hours and the rates and so on, so the time slip ends up looking like a paragraph. Or you can just type a paragraph of what you did, which was outside the scope. So absolutely. And if you have standard F4 explanations, you can actually save some of those extra service explanations and just make slight modifications to them. So that would be the quickest way from A to Z.
Great. Trent, I hope you're still on. Hope you got that answer. Kyle asks, will the Superbill easily flow into QuickBooks?
Yes, it does. Now, Kyle, it goes through so that you can reprint it, but not send it to your client, because QuickBooks cannot handle that last Superbill example that we showed you, where we had 2 paragraphs plus a time slip. QuickBooks does not have the capability to display something like that. If it was just 2 simple rows, it's going to show those 2 rows. So they do export over, and they will be accurate, but they're not the more complex Superbills. The total will be right. The matching up between the work codes and the revenue items, that'll be correct. But you won't be able to reprint it in QuickBooks it'll reprint, but you wouldn't want to give it to your customer.
Okay, thanks, Fred. A couple quick ones I'll hit. Thomas asked, when will we be covering due date management? We will absolutely cover due date and workflow on the next webinar, and we're going to try to do these monthly, if not every 6 weeks or so. So it will be on the next one. And then Stacy asks, when is the webinar going to be active on the website? Well, however long it takes me to edit the first 10 minutes of my hair being on fire trying to figure out how to get the website working. But once I do that, it'll be up later today or tomorrow. Fred, someone asked, how do we switch to the ribbon?
Okay. The ribbon is there if you're on version 9 or better. And what you might want to do is go into the Setup Utilities ribbon. By clicking at the top of the screen, you'll see Setup Utilities. There's a way that you can pin the ribbon, and that's handled at, depending upon the version you have, that's handled usually at the bottom right of the ribbon. I'd encourage you to call support. Excuse me. If your ribbon is, when you click it, it displays, and when you click off of it, it goes away, it's not pinned. So you might want to call tech support for help with that. But once the ribbon is up there, on the Setup Utilities, you can actually hide the traditional menu, which is eventually what I would ask you to do. Because if you just stay in that old pattern of working with Imagine Time, you're not going to get into any of the new features we've added over the last 8 years.
Very good, Fred. A few more on the portal that I'll hit all at once. Will it have email e-signature? Absolutely, it will. Will you be able to have a demo of it and a trial license of it? Yes, that's all coming August 12th. Does it have a desktop version? No, it doesn't. And the reason for that, it's sort of, you're sharing you're sharing via the web, so to speak. So Beverly, I'll clarify that when we talk live. It is a web-based system, but it will work on the desktop. So that may deserve some explanation. Kyle asked earlier, Fred, about the QuickBook integration, and he had a clarification. They use Pro Series, and they enter the bills in QuickBooks currently. Will the information flow between the 3 different products easily? And that's a taller order.
That's a question for support. It can be done, Kyle, but typically, if you do that, you have to start with a QuickBooks Advanced Integration, which stamps the QuickBooks GUID on each client in Imagine Time, and then use the Pro Series ID for the client ID in Imagine Time. Now, if you do both those things in the right sequence, you can hit a home run on that. But I would encourage you to call our tech support people to get more information on that. But yes, it is possible, but it has to be done in a specific order.
Okay, all right, great. Let's see, will there be a PDF of this? Yes, there will. Trent, if you're still on, give us a call. We can answer this for you. He was referring to the header before and above the additional hours outside the scope. He can't figure out how to do that.
That's a memo. That's a memo, Will.
Yep, we can help you with that, Trent. Just give a call on the line if you don't mind, on the support line, or call any of us directly. And then finally, let's see. How can I download what you've talked about? That's an easy one. It will be under the support tab on the website, and we'll also put it under resources on the website. So we rushed through here. Thank you, everyone, for your patience getting started. It was more difficult for us than you, I'll bet, but we got through it. We are going to do these regularly. There is a tremendous amount happening at Imagine Time, and big investment in the product, big investment in our people, the additional products like the client portal coming out here very soon. But with all that said, we want to make sure we're giving you all you need to use the system as effectively as possible, and this is part of that. This education series will be a regular event. And finally, I want to thank Fred so much for being such a good partner, but putting so much time into preparing this for everyone. So with that, I hope you have a great rest of your Thursday and weekend, and a lot more information to follow. Bye now.
Okay. Have a nice day, everybody.